Brilliant. Well, hi, I'm Dave Mckeown, and it's so good to be here today on our Church Explained podcast, a conversation to grow your leadership and build your teams. Today we're joined by a brilliant guest. We've got Steve Campbell with us today. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. Good to be with you.
And of course, my budding host is Nathan Benger. How you doing, Nathan?
Yep. I'm doing well, thank you, and it's good to have Steve with us. We were just cheering him up because Liverpool are through to the next round of the Champions League.
Well, say no more. Now, you guys look pretty studious there, like you've got your books behind you, and I've got a plant. So what can I say this morning?
You're planted. That's all we can say.
Yeah, I'm planted. The question is, what type of plant is it? I will say no more. Well, listen, let me just share a little bit with our audience about Steve this morning, a little bit about bio, and then we're going to kick into some of the questions today. It's going to be a great show, and we're excited to have Steve with us. So Steve and his wife, Angie, moved to Cambridge in 1994 to lead the C3 team. As senior pastors, they have led C3 into an influential and pioneering church known for its worship, teaching, and generosity. So Steve has taught in many different contexts throughout the UK and beyond. He works closely with a number of different streams and churches, teaching and advising on its greatest passion, which is the local church. As a gifted communicator, Steve has the conviction to change people's perception of the church, and he loves to challenge people's mindset of what the church should be. Also, Steve is an avid table tennis fan, and he's willing to take anybody on. Apparently,
yeah,
is that true?
Yeah,
anyone. So,
Steve, have you been challenged by my dad, Paul Benger?
He has challenged me, but we've never had the game yet. Every time there's a table there.
Right,
he's good, is he?
We've got a tennis table. We will get it set up.
I'll go for it.
So that could happen. And do bear in mind, Steve, we have lots of listeners from all different parts of the world, right. Which means actually some of the different countries are very good at table tennis. Uh-oh. So you may have a request. Could come in from anywhere.
Yeah.
So, say no more. But hey, welcome, Steve. Great to have you with us.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me on this beautiful sunny day. So good to be here.
Yeah. Steve, why don't you, obviously we've heard your bio, but why don't you just give us a little bit more about maybe your story, your background, family, location, other things that you love to do for fun?
Wow. Of course. I mean, when you hear your bio, you think, is that me? Is that true? I get nervous on the table tennis. But hey, it's correct. We've been here in Cambridge since 1994. We were pastoring in a church in Birkenhead in the Wirral for a number of years before that. We'd just done a building program there in the Wirral. And in those days, we were part of a larger network of churches. And they asked us, after we just opened our building, in fact, the day of the opening of our building, would we consider perhaps moving? And we were invited to prayerfully consider two places. One was Leeds, and the other was Cambridge. We'd lived in Yorkshire before, and we never felt we were to go back there, though we love Yorkshire. Just been there last week for a wedding. But we came to Cambridge in October 93, Freshers' Weekend, and the Cambridge then and now is horrendous for parking. It was just cars everywhere. We parked about 2 miles out, walked into the city, and just sensed no voice from heaven, but that God had called us to Cambridge. And so we went back to the oversight that we were working with and said, yeah, Cambridge is where we want to go. So between October 93, we put our house on the market. We didn't sell it. We rented it out, found a house here in Cambridge to rent, and moved in the 94. One thing we said to the oversight was, we want to be somewhere for the long haul, because we'd observed there'd been a lot of movement in our network, and the movement was often related to a crisis, and everyone faces some kind of crisis at some point. And so we said, can we say the long haul? And they said, well, that's kind of up to you. Of course, we've had our crises over the years, over 28 years, you can't avoid that, but we've stuck at it. And God's been good, and the church has grown. And I can tell you, 28 years is a lot of time. We didn't think we'd be here that long. We can't imagine moving anywhere else, but who knows? We now have 3 sites, well, 4 if you include online. Can you see all 4 fingers?
We can see them.
Yeah.
We started in Bury St Edmunds, a congregation there. We started in Colchester just last September. Miraculous provision of a building, and we've got about 80 and 90 people meeting there at the moment. They're growing fast, actually, and then we're online. So Cambridge, Bury St Edmunds, Colchester, and online, and that covers online. Obviously, covers the globe, but the other 3 are in different counties as well: Cambridgeshire, Essex, and Suffolk. So, what do I do? You asked for fun. I'm a Liverpool supporter, as you just mentioned, Nathan. At the moment, that's really fun. But I still supported Liverpool when it wasn't fun. All right, I was still there, but I'm a bit more vocal. I'm a bit more vocal now than I was for a few seasons. So that's a joy. I'm also a fisherman. I go fishing. I've got a goal this year to catch what they call a specimen carp. That's a carp that's over 20 pounds. Wow. I've been with a guy.
Wow.
The last few weeks we caught nothing. I'm going again in the end of April. But I'm also a fly fisherman, so I'm in a very, very exclusive club that cost me a lot of money this year. So I've got to do more fishing, and that's for fly fishing. So that's fun. I'm married to one wife, Angie. We met at Sunday school. She was 12, I was 14 when I asked her out, and our mum was horrified, quite rightly so. Partly because she was so young, but partly because it was me. But we eventually were allowed to go out. We got married, and we have 3 children. Josh, who's 32, Becky, who's 30, and then Megan, who's 20-something, 24, I think she is.
Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. We just want to take a moment and pause and let you know about something exciting we have on offer right here from Icon Open. We help leaders find solutions through our coaching and team training. And we've worked with all types of churches in different countries around the world, from large churches to small churches, and of course anything in between. And leaders come to us for a variety of reasons. For some, they simply want to get to the next level in their leadership. They want a coach to work with them for a period of time so they can get new momentum or fresh ideas or fresh insights for the next part of their journey. Other leaders will come to us, maybe they're working through some opportunities or challenges in their church, and just maybe to have someone to think with them and help them process through big ideas like staffing or teams or transitions really does seem to make a difference to them. So if you've never had a coach and you're a senior leader or a leader within a church, we want to encourage you to get in touch with us, because we think we can really help you find the solutions you need for the next part of your journey. Have a look at icon.church/coaching and you'll find all the details there of how to connect with us, and we look forward to hearing from you very, very soon. Brilliant. Hey, well, what a journey. And I was just thinking about the fishing there. The problem with fishing, I think, in the UK is the fact, and people will hate me for this, but the fact that they put the fish back in again after catching them. And of course, I know it's a sport, but somehow, for me, it still doesn't make sense. I want to eat them, Steve. That's my problem.
Yeah. Well, that's the good thing. If I go fly fishing and I go for trout, then I can eat them.
That's the difference,
is
it?
What they call coarse fishing, you don't eat them because they taste horrible.
Okay. Well, we'll say no more. We'll say no more on that.
You know what I should have mentioned, because this is another joy in my life these days, is I've got 2 grandchildren. I've got Caleb, who's 4, and just great to be around. And I've got we've got Indigo, who's only 7 months. She was born last September. So they're beautiful. They restore my soul when I'm with them.
Wonderful. So some changes there for you in lockdown. You've mentioned that you started the church in Colchester and also a grandchild as well.
Yeah, that's right.
We want to find out a little bit more about what life was like for you through the pandemic. What's the last season been like? You know, what's been your challenges, your learning, your wins for you personally? What's that been like for you, Steve?
Yeah, well, I'll be as honest as I can be on this. There have been a lot of learnings, but when the pandemic began right early on, so, back in 2020, was it early 2020, we had a guy in the church who got it very very early on, and nobody knew anything about it. And he got very sick. Cut a long story short, we had thousands of people praying for him, Tim Creamer. He was the guy in the church with us who you would go to for prayer for healing. He was a real man of faith, beautiful guy, very generous. But he passed away, and I was there with his wife when they had to turn off the machines, which I found very, very traumatic. Wearing all the PPE gear, I mean, I found it traumatic. Think what it was like for his wife.
Sure.
And I felt we were carrying a lot in that season because we carried the grief of the church. There was a lot of people that were deeply shocked. At one point, we had 25,000 people praying for Tim. And so we were really believing for a breakthrough. It didn't happen. So early on in the pandemic, that really affected me. Also, my mum died at that point in lockdown. I couldn't be with her. I could only watch her on FaceTime as she passed away. My sister was with her. And that hit me hard because my mum, she'd gradually been deteriorating, but you never imagine the death of your parent being from a distance. So I have to say, if I'm honest, pandemic early on hit me very hard. The isolation, the not being able to meet. We also had some stuff kicking off in the church. There was a safeguarding issue, which I'd made a decision on a few years ago. And then we had some staff internal stuff going on. Oh, boy, was I fried. I was fried. I really I didn't burn out, but I got really close to it. So I had to shout for help. My wife was fantastic. She was very strong there. But we got some external counselling. We got some time off. We didn't take too much time off, but we made sure we did. And I found there was something that restored in me. Now, in all of that, there was some great opportunities that were going on in the church. Our community impact stuff just flew. We had the offer of a warehouse, which was 13,000 square foot, which we started to do all our food distribution from. We got grants, I mean, big grants, tens of thousands of pounds that were available from government and from different organizations. And we were able to do food distribution to people in need across the city, in fact, across the region. We had supermarkets partnering with us. We had suppliers that were delivering directly to us. And it really did bang. What we did with our building, and we'll probably talk about our building later on, is we turned it into a distribution center for food. And so we brought it all from the warehouse, distributed from there. And also we made it a studio, because that was the other thing that was going really well for us. Everyone went online. But right early on online, we had contact from a TV station called Way Out TV, who go into prisons. And they'd seen our program on our Sunday morning service online on Facebook and said, can we stream it? Or we don't actually stream, it's not live, it's recorded and then goes into the cells, because the prisoners at that point with COVID were having 21 hours a day in their cells, and they all had their own TV. Anyway, again, long story short, so this is all this other crappy stuff's going on over here, family and loss, and all this the church is taking off in regard to people online. And the prisons, we went into 69,000 potential prisoners in over 50 prisons across the country, which has just continued to grow. We're in there every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, no other church service. And we get letters all the time from prisoners who've watched it and are still watching it. And it's there. Chapel was closed. Everything was closed in prison. So that was just the favor of God. And that's continued, as I say, post-lockdown. So we were seeing more people obviously connecting. The online, we were already online. We were slightly ahead of the curve. Honestly, we were playing with it. It wasn't serious, but at least we'd invested in some equipment and gear, and that's what happened. So, learnings. I suppose the biggest learning for me was in the early stages pacing myself. I became far too available to everyone. Thank God for technology. But when everyone's contacting you on Messenger, direct Twitter, Instagram direct, email. You're online all the time. We started a show called The Invincible Show, which we were doing every week. And we couldn't. We thought we'd do this every week for the whole of the pandemic for the next 8 weeks. That's what we thought. How long it would last. We just couldn't sustain it. But so I was fried not just because of what was going on, but because of my availability. So one of the things I did learn was don't make yourself so available. You've got to. I've got to protect my health to be the best that I can for everyone else, not just for me. So I had to put stronger limits on. That's one of the things we did going forward with some of our media and such like. I've come off a lot of social media now. I still kind of keep an eye on it, but I'm not just as present for me because I was just getting too drawn by it and it was too exhausting. So there was that, and then the second part was learn. You never know what God's got up his sleeve.
Yeah,
I could not have foreseen the prison stuff. We didn't have that on our vision. We didn't have that on our agenda. It's actually increased. I might say it later. We've got a new role with another organisation, and they've given us more time into the prisons for the next 6 months.
Wow.
That was out of the blue, totally out of the blue. So God surprises you, and you can't. I don't know what you can do to surprise, but be ready for the surprise. They just come. It was one of those suddenlies of God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Same with the provision of the warehouse, which we don't have now, but the fact that someone just offered us that because they saw what we're doing in our building was amazing. Just we call it C3 Impact. It just grew to another level within weeks.
It's fantastic, that.
Yeah,
it's amazing. It's amazing story of God's favor, but also the story of God's favor in those challenging times as well. And I guess as the senior leader there, Steve, you were leading the team and leading leaders. So I wonder if you'd talk to us just a little bit how you kept your vision moving forward in those moments, those challenging times. I know you got opportunities coming, but for yourself, you were talking about this is a challenging time.
Yeah.
How did you keep leading those leaders and those teams forward in vision in those moments?
Yeah. Great question. Very early on, one thing we started to emphasize was, although everything was changing around us, so the way we were communicating had to be different, the way we did our services online, the way we were connecting with people because we couldn't physically meet. I coined this phrase, nothing's changed, but everything's changed. And what I meant by nothing's changed was the vision still remained the same. The outworking of that was looking very different and changing almost certainly fortnightly. We were having, the favorite word at the time, which we adopted but I hated, was pivot. You have to pivot because new regulations are coming in. Something should, so let's pivot. So we were pivoting all the time.
Yeah.
But we had to keep the main thing. So our strapline is reaching and shaping a generation with the message and cause of Christ, which we kind of instill into everyone. We were still saying that this is what we're here to do. So let's not lose sight of what is core to everything we're doing. We're not changing the vision. We are changing some of the methodologies in order to achieve that vision, but let's get on with it. The other thing we did was, and this was hard, we had to make some adjustments to our staffing. So we had to make some redundancies, which was really painful. But we did that in order to give more time and finance and focus to our online stuff because that was growing, and more time and space to our C3 Impact. So we increased our staffing levels there, and we had to let some people go. That wasn't easy. That was painful, but we were doing it because we were going to be more effective in reaching and shaping generation with the message and cause of Christ. We'd already, this is why it was an interesting season as well, we'd just been in the overhaul of our leadership team, in that we'd gone from a much broader base of what we describe as an exec team. We were all right to function with senior leaders and exec pastor and then others for a while, but we discovered that was too small of a pinhead to operate on. So we empowered a lot more people to be on our executive main leadership team, which we just simply called our lead team. And what we were seeking to do then, and still are now, is make sure that they are leaders of leaders. So you used the phrase, Nathan, about me, which is what I try to do more. So I'm trying all the time to be more on it than in it. I'm trying not to be in the weeds and seeds and genuinely give authority and power away. Well, we sought to do that right the way across the board with that team. We need doers, so I'm not knocking doers, but we were saying to them, we'll get more done through working through people that we genuinely empower. And that is volunteers as well. In fact, we couldn't do anything we do without the key volunteers who make it all happen. So that's what we kept coming back to. Keep the vision clear, keep giving authority away. And nothing's changed in regard to that one post-pandemic, as if we're really post-pandemic. I know we're not. But we're still working on that. And even our staffing, when we're looking to bring in new staff, what can we do to bring in more people that are genuinely leaders of leaders?
And I think that's a big thing that you've mentioned there. It's about empowering people, Steve, isn't it? Rather than the senior leader trying to be involved in every single detail, there's something about being more strategic, isn't there? And maybe even for those listening today, some of the senior leaders, just to keep that in mind, that actually it's not about, being involved in every detail, but actually, as you say there, Steve, just releasing people and giving them the authority and trusting them probably is a big thing for senior leaders as well.
Absolutely. Because
often we want to be involved in every detail, but actually there's something about just trusting people and releasing people, isn't there?
Yeah. I think, going back to what did we learn in pandemic, one of the things I probably learned was to keep my hands off more things. There was things that we often, people like me, we have to fight control issues. We know what we want, and if we don't get it, we can be over meddling. I've had to be willing to say, okay, we know where we want to go. Maybe what we want can be decided by other people rather than just always me. And I think sometimes we've delegated the things we don't like to do. I've tried to delegate the things I do like to do. So I love communication. I love preaching. I know some people, they come to me and they say, we want to hear more from you. And I love people saying that because it strokes my ego wonderfully. But I genuinely want to empower others to be communicators. And I think some of them do it better than me in some areas. They're different. But I've genuinely given authority away. So I don't over meddle even in that process. I still set the big picture. This is where we're going. If this is a series that we're going to do. But I want to empower people to use, if preaching, for example, is truth via the personality, I want them to be themselves. I don't want them to be a carbon copy of me. And so I've given authority away in that way. And we're doing that all the time. But it's not delegating the stuff you don't like. It's delegating the stuff you do like, but you think others... And it's not always that they can do it better. Sometimes they can. But they'll never do it better if they don't genuinely have authority and space to do it.
No, it's been so good to have Steve with us, and thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of the Church Explained podcast, everyone. If you could subscribe, rate, review wherever you're consuming this content, then that helps us massively. And share it with someone that you know that would be inspired or helped by this episode. Make sure you check out the show notes that you can find at icon.church/open, plus also a load of free resources. But we look forward to being together next time on the Church Explained podcast. We will see you soon.